Hello, my people, and welcome to my 2024 Indie Horror Game Awards, an idea that I stole from Scariest, who is another horror game content creator. I recommend you go watch him. He's a cool YouTuber. Anyways, this is how it's gonna work. I have a bunch of categories, and I'm gonna take all the horror games from this year that I've played and say my top 3 for each category. But there are some things I'm gonna remove and add from the original rules. First of all, the categories I'm gonna remove are best adaptation, because there are no adaptations that I know of this year. Best fan game, because I don't play fan games. I mean, I played Sprunky, I guess, but more than that, no. And worst and best horror games decided by you guys through a survey, because my audience is not big enough, which is a perfect time to beg for subs, so please consider subscribing so that maybe if I do this another year I could add these categories. But I'm also going to add an honorable mention to some categories and also an unplayed mention, which are games that I didn't play for various reasons that I think would make the list if I had played them. Anyways, that's the rules. Let's start what you came here for. Starting off, we got the best soundtrack. An unplayed mention goes to Bad Parenting, because it got a fire funk version, so I'm guessing it's good. And for an honorable mention, I'll give it to Indigo Park by Unique Geese, just because of Rambly Review, only Rambly Review. But at number 3, I'm giving it to Mouthwashing by Wrong Organ. This game had some really intense music, some calm music, and some really unsettling music too. For just talking sheer quality, this takes the cake, but we're including my personal music taste and how fitting the music is too. That does not mean I don't personally like the music though. The music in this game is probably something you would find in my Spotify playlist. I just think they could have made the music a bit more fitting. A disturbing horror game would not normally have a calm main theme that sounds like it was made by the artist Home. But of course this music is still a vibe and has a lot of variety, like I said in the beginning. At number 2, however, I'm giving it to Kiniropet by Troa_N. The slow and stupidly simple music of this game is really charming and fitting, and even though I personally like Mouthwashing's music more, for example, I still think they couldn't have chosen a better music type than that slow-paced, simple music that sounds like it was made by an old computer. And of course we can't forget about A World I Built For You, the third best musical number in a horror game in my opinion. It's just another cute song about Kiniro being grateful to be your friend. It's just nice, man. But at number 1, we are Finding Frankie by Super Lou Games. Throughout the game, there's a lot of Fall Guys-like music that, yeah, I think it's fitting, but for some reason in the end boss fight, they just decide to add a fire-ass dubstep track for some reason. And after all that, there's a really epic but also calm song that added so much to that end cutscene, my god. They also had a musical number at the end, which wasn't awesome, but I still appreciated it. I also like how this game can be so intentionally goofy sometimes. Like that dubstep song did not need to be in that boss fight, but they decided to add it anyway, just because, yeah, this game had some hilarious, cool and fitting music and I love it. Staying at the sound category, next is sound design. This is just the games where the sound effects had the most impact on the game and sound the coolest, of course. An honorable mention here goes to Silent Breath by Exodiac Studios, which had some goofy sound design sometimes, I know, but still had good sound design that added a lot to the jump scares. At number 3 though, I gotta give it to Five Nights at Freddy's Into the Pit by Megacat Studios. FNAF Into the Pit sound design was way more impressive than it needed to be. There are some scary cutscenes in the game which were very enhanced by the sound effects. The sound design of the animatronics were... I don't know how they made those sounds. There are some really scary sound effects, like when Spring Bonnie finds you or the jump scare, but overall the sound effects for everything was really well done throughout the entire game and I was really impressed. FNAF Into the Pit was not just another FNAF game, and this is one of those things that proves it. At number 2 though, it's going to Mouthwashing by Wrong Organ. Now, while FNAF Into the Pit had cooler sound effects, it's the way that mouthwashing sound was executed that made it beat it. Here's what I mean. There's a lot of horrifying and disturbing torture and violence scenes where you might hear someone scream in pain and then the screen goes pitch black and everything goes dead silent. And the way that feels is just... Is that feeling where it's so disturbing, even if you weren't recording, you still had to look at that imaginary camera in your room. Yeah, this game had some very disturbing sound design. There are like ASMR sound effect YouTube videos dedicated to you giving Curly his pills. So yeah, the execution of this game's sound design was beautiful, and not to mention the sound design itself was great too. But at number 1, I gotta give it to Kinetopet by Troy_N. I love how they make all sorts of Kinetopet sounds sound like they were made by an old computer. I know I've already talked about that while talking about the soundtrack, but it just leaves such an iconic, fitting, and charming sense that immediately gets turned off by, Kineto leaking your location, but it's supposed to be like that. For best art direction, I'm going off of creativity, impressiveness, and impact on the game. An unplayed mention here is Life Eater by Strange Scaffold, which probably would have been number 1, but I didn't play it, and an honorable mention goes to Mouthwashing by Wrong Organ, mostly for the visuals. And at number 3 for this category, I'm giving it to Five Nights at Freddy's Into the Pit by Megacat Studios. The pixel art of this game is some of the best pixel art I've seen in any horror game in general. The fluent animations, like in the cutscenes or when you're hiding or stunning. The character design is really charming and cool, and the designs of some locations are sick. Best art direction of any mascot horror game as far as I know. The art direction is obviously a big part of why it's a standout FNAF game. I really liked what they were going for in terms of art this game. Doesn't beat number 2, however, which is Kinetopet by Troy_N. Yes, I know I've talked about this game enough already, alright? It's not my fault, it's a great game. The animations of Kineto being in your computer are cool, but then we got 3D animations, which are probably my favorite part of the game's art. They're really cool and fluent and usually really dark and scary. They also have cool 2D moments that are charming and cute, and in the blink of an eye, there's a dead body in the room. And of course, we have to mention the character design. Kineto and his friends have nice and simple designs, and then there are dark 3D versions of those two which have sick designs. At number 1 though, I'm giving it to Loreley and the Laser Eyes by Simogo. The black and white design of this game is really fitting and gives that detective game vibe that you're supposed to get, and the 3D art and animations are straight gorgeous. Some of the visuals throughout the puzzles and the game itself and character design was also amazing, and they just did so many things correctly. I wasn't surprised though, considering it was published by Annapurna Interactive, who published Stray, Flock, Outer Wilds, and much more, all just beautifully styled games. Up next is Best Story and Storytelling, and yes, both the story and the way it's told counts. An unplayed mention here goes to Crow Country by SFB Games. Yeah, the creators of Snipper Clips, that Nintendo co-op game for kids. Yeah, I just wanted to mention that. I did play Crow Country, but I don't think I played it enough to give a good and honest opinion on it. And an unexpected honorable mention goes to Shipwrecked 64 by Squeaks the Corgay. I didn't expect this game to have a good story, but here we are. At number 3 though for this category goes to Loreley and the Laser Eyes by Simogo again. I like the storytelling where you don't know much about what's happening, and the more you play, the more you understand. Gives great potential for plot twists and actually makes me really invested in the story. And overall, the writing is wonderful. This game's story is really mysterious, which it's supposed to be, and even though I haven't played the full game, I'm guessing it's just gonna get better from here for that. At number 2, I'm giving it to Five Nights at Freddy's Into the Pit by Megacat Studios. I think this was pretty obvious considering the game is literally based off of a book. I know I use the word charming a lot in this video for some reason, but when we're talking charming, we gotta include FNAF Into the Pit story and storytelling. I like how you, unlike other FNAF games, actually get to experience day and night getting the full story, and the ending, or should I say endings, were awesome. I also like the character and writing of this game. I got hooked on this game's story really quickly and I really enjoyed it. But probably the easiest number one in this entire video is Mouthwashing by Wrong Organ. This game's storytelling is so good that not only is it the best storytelling of all indie horror games this year, it's also one of the best in the entire indie horror genre in general. And not only that, probably had the best storytelling of any game this entire year. Just like Lurley and the Laser Eyes, Mouthwashing's story gets more and more unraveled because the story is not in chronological order, leaving space for great plot twists and an actual interesting story. The writing is top-notch, which gets proven by the time you get to Swansea's speech, which I'm not going to talk about more because of spoilers, but if you haven't played the game, it's an awesome speech, trust me. I also love the character development 80% of the time, and the ending might be the best ending of this entire year, including like 10,000 plot twists. Without the insane story, this game would just be another boring walking simulator. Even though FNAF Into the Pit was second place, its storytelling gets absolutely clapped by Mouthwashing storytelling. Up next, I want to talk about the scariest indie horror games of the year. Two unplayed mentions here are Supernatural by Hitoride Productions and Psalm 113 by Ranwog Rotex and Aleska, I don't know how to pronounce these, which I honestly didn't play purely because it looked too scary for me. At number 3 for this category, I'm actually giving it to Nightmare Files Clap Clap by Ray Castley. For being about 20 minutes, I was really impressed by this game's horror. The whole idea of having to walk directly into a room to turn the lights on is a genius, and the build up to the ending is amazing. I literally played this game twice and got scared both times. I think that says enough. At number 2 though, it's The Stairway 7 by Steel Krill Studios. This is the only Anomaly game I've ever played, but based on what I've seen of the other Anomaly games, this one has the scariest anomalies. The jump scare when you fail might be the most brutal jump scare I've ever experienced, and the ending was absolutely terrifying along with Mouthwashing. It's the best ending of an indie horror game this year. I don't think there's much more to say. This is just really good horror, and without the ending, this might have not even been on the list at all. But at number 1, I'm giving it to Silent Breath by Exodiac Studios. I didn't like this game at all, and without the horror, this would genuinely be the worst game I've ever played. The jump scares in this game are, just like I said before, sometimes goofy, always scary. In the Stairway 7, you at least feel safe sometimes when you don't see an anomaly. This game doesn't give you shit. It just makes you go through dark woods knowing you could get jump scared any second. The only problem I have with this game is that the jump scares literally have no build up. I guess you can consider walking in a dark, eerie forest could be considered build up, but other than that, this is still a ridiculously scary game. Up next are the most underrated and underappreciated games. An unplayed mention here goes to Life Eater by Strange Scaffold, which got overthrown by Clickleding somehow. And number 3 for this category is going to The Stairway 7 by Steel Krill Studios. There were quite a few Anomaly horror games this year, and all seemed worse but more popular than The Stairway 7. I'm talking I'm on Observation Duty 7, False Dream, Shenkan's and Zero, The Platform 8, all seemed to get more attention than The Stairway 7. Yet The Stairway 7 was terrifying, and the ending was scary, shocking, and actually had a good plot twist. At number 2 though, it's going to CV's Factory by Quad Labs. I know this game wasn't very special, and the devs of this game also made Scariest, skibidi toilet in the... I'm done with life. But I think this game was actually good for being a part of those Garden of Banban type games, to the point that I think it almost can't be counted into that category. The character design wasn't goofy and unoriginal, some of the animations in the game were awesome, the story was actually somewhat original, and for a free game, I didn't mind this release, and I think it could get even better in the other chapters. I do have a good guess on why this is, however. There were a lot of great mascot horror games that came out this year, Shipwreck 64, Kiniro Pet, and much, much more. And average, typical mascot horror isn't really cared for anymore, except for the fact that there were still popular slop releases this year, like what the fuck? At number 1, it's going to Blanco 1 by N404. Of course, this is a 20-minute itch game, and those types of games get like 3 seconds of fame, but this one was different. A lot of people just glanced over this game and thought, oh, another itch game, but when you actually play the full game and look deep into it, there's an interesting message in it. It's more of a life lesson than a game, but of course it was scary, cool, and had a sick ending. Up next, I'm gonna talk about the best dev and studio, which is just the ones that accomplished the most this year and how impressed I was with the accomplishments. At number 3 for this category, I'm going to have Megacat Studios for FNAF Into the Pit. Megacat Studios single-handedly made me regain my hope for Five Nights at Freddy's. Not only was the game really good, a complaint I had with FNAF was that the games weren't changing much, and when they were, it didn't turn out great. But this one changed the direction of FNAF in the right way. It managed to be a great game while still making the game feel like a FNAF game. At number 2, however, is Unigeese for Indigo Park. Indigo Park is trying to achieve the opposite of what Poppy Playtime and a lot of other mascot horror games are trying to achieve. Poppy Playtime is all for the money, merchandise, and workplace sexism. But Indigo Park has passion and charm to it that regain people's hope in mascot horror. No unwanted merchandise, no brain rot fan base, just a good mascot horror game that actually cared about being a good game. Getting the title The Savor Mascot Horror is really cool and enough to be put on this list. At number 1, though, I'm giving it to my club... I'm allowed to say that name, right? This guy is the dev of Buckshot Roulette. The reason I'm putting this guy here, even though I've never even played the game, is because even though the game was released in early 2024, people kept playing it for a long time due to its replayability. Not only that, but something every fan was asking for was a multiplayer mode, and he actually listened and gave them a multiplayer mode, leaving YouTubers playing the game in the fall. Not only did he make what's probably one of the biggest indie horror games of the year, he kept it famous throughout the entire year, which I think is really impressive. We're almost at the best and worst horror games, but before we do that, I want to talk about the best mascot horror games. Now, in this list, I can only add the 100% confirmed mascot horror games. There's a lot of debate regarding what's a mascot horror game and what's not, like could mouthwashing be considered one since the ship you're on has a mascot? Is Granny a mascot horror game? Is Aoni a mascot horror game? We'll never know, but these are confirmed mascot horror games and nobody can convince me otherwise. And as much as it's painful for me to say this, an unplayed mention goes to Poppy Playtime Chapter 3 by Mob Entertainment, even though I hate Mob Entertainment with all my heart. And an honorable mention goes to Finding Frankie by Super Lou Games. At number 3 on this list, I'm giving it to Shipwreck 64 by Squeaked Corgay. This is kinda unfair, since I haven't finished this game yet, but even though I haven't finished it yet, it's still a great game so far. It has some good scares, it's fun, it's original, and it almost got an honorable mention in OST or soundtrack and art direction. The only problem I have with this game is how hard it is to know what the fuck to do. I could not get anywhere without a walkthrough on YouTube, and even with that, I can't glitch through a goddamn wall even though I'm doing the exact thing as the motherfucker in the video. But this game is also full of secrets and endings, which increases the replayability and makes me want to explore more, and I think this game was great. Not as great as number 2 though, which is Kinetopet by Troy_N. Kinetopet did things that I didn't know was possible to do in a game. This game is as good as at breaking the fourth wall as it is at breaking my hidden identity. I think it was clear that it would be on here since it's been within so many categories. It's annoying, but it's just that good of a game. It has great music, great character design, good writing, good scares. Although this is more of an experience than a game, I'd say, but this game was so cool and shocking, and even though it might not be the best horror game of the year, it's the most impressive, and that's for sure. But at number 1, we have FNAF Into the Pit by Megacat Studios. Just like Kinetopet, this game has appeared enough times in this video for it to be obvious that I'm putting it here. If you didn't know, I'm not the biggest fan of FNAF. I don't like the horror, I don't like how much they rely on jump scares, and I don't like the gameplay. But Into the Pit fixes all those problems and managed to make a third-person counterpart of a game scarier than the original first-person game. And that's why I appreciate the game so much. It kept the FNAF spirit, yet changed everything bad about it for the better. I hope Megacat Studios keeps making FNAF games, because they are superior to Steelwool Studios. Next up are the worst ones of the entire year. Now, Unplagued by the Euphoric Brothers and Psychosis by Clapperheads both get an unplayed mention, or should I say, unplagued mention. My dad left me when I was 3. I didn't play them, but purely because of how bad they looked, and an honorable mention goes to Mimic Search by Gemizal. At number 3, it's going to Muzi by Andrew Rebis. I cannot pronounce these names. Despite this game being the first ever game I played on this channel, this really isn't a good game. This is just a Garden of Banban and Puppy Playtime ripoff that relies way too much on jump scares, has boring gameplay with useless mechanics, and is way too short for a game that actually costs money on Steam. At number 2 is Silent Breath by Exodiac Studios. Despite this being the scariest indie horror game of the year in my opinion, this game wasn't really that good at all. Throughout the entire game, all you do is just collecting posters and yeah, that's it. Now if you're saying, well, the purpose of the game is to make as little noise as possible when I get jump scared, which is a really cool idea, that's not even their original idea. It was stolen from the game Don't Scream. This game is just boring gameplay with a side of unoriginal ideas, and the game costs like $9 on Steam. What the hell, man? But at number 1 is going to Baki by AJB Game Studio. This might be the only game I've ever played with nothing good going for it. It's just a pure walking simulator, AI-generated, unfun, jump-scare-relying, unoriginal piece of garbage. This might be the first horror game where I couldn't bear finishing purely because of how painfully bad it is. This is also the first game I've ever played on Steam where I've requested a refund. This game also has like no checkpoints or save points, so even if you got past a tough or long part of the game, you have to redo that entire torture method by spawning at the fucking beginning. But lightening the mood, we're finally at the best indie horror games of the year, and an honorable mention goes to Shipwrecked 64 by Squeaks the Core Gay. At number 3, it's going to Kinetopet by Troy_N. I've already talked about this game, so let's just repeat everything I've said. This is definitely the most impressive game out of all of these, and I genuinely got shocked playing it. So many things about this game, like its soundtrack, art direction, sound design, and character design, are so high quality. It's such a creative game, and there are some things in the game that I didn't even think were humanly possible to do in a game. This is how you shock someone in a game. No gore everywhere for no reason, no blatant murder and shit. Just creative ways to make you think Kineto is outside your window. This was the first amazing mascot horror game we got in a long time. At number 2 is Five Nights at Freddy's Into the Pit by Megacat Studios. This is probably the game that appeared the most in this video, including Kiniro Pet, and for a good reason. Mega Cat Studios took FNAF and did basically everything perfect with it. Into the Pit is such a new and improved direction for Five Nights at Freddy's. It's original and creative, it's fun and replayable, it's scary without relying too much on jump scares, and it has really high quality artwork, animation, sound design, and story. I love this game, and it's the only S-tier FNAF game in my opinion. But easily at number 1 we got Mouthwashing by Wrong Organ. This is my favorite horror game of the year, but is also at least in my top 3 games of the year, if not my favorite game of the year. It has one of the greatest narratives of all time, sick artwork and visuals, it's really scary and disturbing, has absolutely sick characters, has an amazing and surprising ending, and it is the first walking simulator that did the gameplay well. The writing feels really real and you feel like you're actually talking to real people. The creativity of some sections in the game are awesome. This game had really great impact through the story and storytelling with so much emotion to it, and it's not surprising in the slightest that this was a fan favorite in the indie horror community throughout the entire year. Next up is most anticipated. These are upcoming games that I'm most excited for and the announced ones that grabbed my attention the most, and in the most anticipated category, just like the baddest, I'm talking about 6 games for this instead of 3 to shout out some more games. And I think I gotta talk about Nightmare Files Stoned by Ray Castley. After Clap Clap, I was hyped to see what more the Nightmare Files series has to offer, which I unfortunately didn't hear anyone else talking about, which kinda made me sad because I'm really excited for more of the Nightmare Files series, and I really hope that Ray Castley won't be a one-hit wonder game developer. It also just looks like a cool game and an interesting idea. Next, I want to talk about Hotel Investigation 09 by Squeaks the Core Gay, the upcoming sequel to Shipwreck 64, I think. I haven't finished Shipwreck 64 yet, and it's still such a great game, and I really don't want Squeaks to mess up this sequel because I think it has so much potential, and I'm just so excited for it. Up next is my most anticipated, which is Little Nightmares 3 by Supermassive Games, which was supposed to come out in 2024, but got delayed. I'm so goddamn excited for this game, because if you didn't know, Little Nightmares series might be my favorite indie horror series of all time, and after their newest trailer on the game, I've become even more excited to play the game than ever. And it's co-op, which makes everything even better. Then we got one which is probably the most anticipated for a lot of you guys, which is Subnautica 2 by Unknown Worlds Entertainment. This game looks absolutely amazing and might give Unknown Worlds a comeback ever since Subnautica Below Zero. It's also the 16th most wishlisted game on Steam at the moment, so everyone's really excited for this. Up next, I want to talk about Don't Fret by Antic Games and Scary Kid Studios. I haven't played the demo for this game, but I've heard it's really good, and going off the trailer, it seems legit. It looks really creative, the art looks great, and it actually looks decently scary. It just looks like a really charming, standout mascot horror game in the subgenre. Lastly, I want to talk about Reanimal by Tarsier Studios, which I'm not sure if it's coming out in 2025, but it's at least announced. Not only does this game look amazing, Tarsier Studios literally decided to abandon the Little Nightmares series to work on this project, which clearly shows just how passionate they are about this. This game's trailer absolutely amazed me. The character design looks awesome, it looks horrifying, and it genuinely impressed me. And that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed watching, and I'm really excited for the things that are coming next year. Peace out.